to US authorities, even if it's hosted in Europe. European providers like 3D Mark Times by Extreme and also at the 3D Mark Speedway to get an impression of both older and newer games. And for the older games and raster performance, 3D Mark Times by Extreme GT1 is a very good indicator. There we can see the RTX 5070 Ti being about 12% faster than the 4070 Ti Super and about 7% behind the 7900.
That's brutal, man. That's actually brutal. 4070 Ti Super was just overpowered, maybe? Like, 5070 Ti should be outbeating the 4070 Ti Super by quite a bit. So, I don't get that.
100 XTX. In this situation, the 5070 Ti is about twice as fast as an RTX 2080 Ti. And now for newer games, 3D Mark Speedway, especially if they use ray tracing. Interestingly, in this scenario, the 5070 Ti beats the RTX 4080, while it consumes about 10% less power. It also clearly beats the 7900 XTX. And in this situation, it is about 9% faster than the 4070 Ti Super. Now, before we jump into the gaming benchmarks, we will first look at this card in more detail when it comes to fan speed, coil whine, how it clocks, PCIe speed and all that. The MSI Ventus 3X was pretty decent for me. It's a quiet card, and even as you can see now in idle, it's semi-passive. The PCB is quite short, as you can see. That's why the power connector is a little bit inconvenient in the center. Generally speaking though, I was positively surprised with the card, with the layout. It is pretty quiet, and also I didn't really notice any kind of coil whine, which was good. Same as 5080 and 5090, also the RTX 5070 Ti comes with PCIe 5.0. I'm just running the render test to...
Which apparently with the PCIe 5.0, there's a lot of issues with it. There's a lot of drivers just uninstalling themselves for some reason, black screening. The black screen's more or less from the driver uninstalling themselves, so it kind of makes sense there. But it's like, you gotta troubleshoot, but there's no actual fix for that, so that's kind of odd there too. But could that also be part of like their connectors, like their connectors on the actual PCB? Could that be an issue there? Or is it an actual issue with the PCIe 5.0?
Force it into X16, otherwise the power saving mode would drop it down to, for example, 1.1.
I guess it can't be, because Paul's Hardware said he tried it also in Gen 4 and Gen 3, and apparently it does not fix the issue. Apparently some people said switching it over to Gen 4 PCIe, that it would help fix the issue, but he's tried in multiple different ways and it keeps doing the same thing, keeps uninstalling the driver, which is very odd.
But with this specific card, I didn't have any issues with PCIe 5.0. You can also see 16 GB with GDDR7, which is the main difference, at least when it comes to the memory, to, for example, at 4080, and we will just switch to the gaming scenario. If we're looking at how the GPU behaves, we can see 2750 on the GPU, 1750 on the memory. The GPU temperature is always
stock
around
settings,
65 degrees Celsius. Memory temperature I saw slightly above 70 degrees Celsius.
GPU temperature looked really good too.
Absolutely green zone. What I observed, what I find interesting, is that whenever I put the card under load, the initial fan speed is always a bit higher, so it's maybe 2150 RPM, and then it is dropping down a little bit to about 2000, which I personally think could still be lower. So if you want to tweak this manually, you could surely still make this card quite a bit more quiet, especially looking at the 65 degrees Celsius on the GPU. So there is certainly headroom.
Now don't quote me, I'm pretty sure all of the manufacturers, or most of the manufacturers, are using like the PTM now. I could be wrong about that, so like the actual melting thermal pads, basically, they're all using that style. I heard that some manufacturers like Asus with the top lines where you use liquid metal, but apparently there is no liquid metal. Or in Nvidia's 5090's Founders Edition, they're going to use liquid metal, but there's no liquid metal, which really, it's odd. And Frame Chasers, I believe, did a video of the 5080, or yeah, I'm pretty sure he did with the 5080, and he checked that the Founders Edition had a copper plate instead of it being like a nickel plate like the 5090. It had a copper one. So even if you did do liquid metal, there's a big chance that you'd have to like redo the liquid metal over and over, because the liquid metal will eat its way into the copper and make a layer of liquid metal on top of the copper. If you wanted to, you could take apart the graphics card and actually like put liquid metal onto. Don't use the card for a while. Put liquid metal onto it, wipe it away, put more liquid metal away, wipe it away until you build up a layer of liquid metal, and then you can probably sand that flat with like a lapping plate of some sort, and that would actually stop the liquid metal from like just drying out way too quickly. Plus, I just put it like a layer over top of the copper, which could act like a nickel plating basically, but completely liquid metal, which would be nice to do, be a nice like try out and see if it would work. But I could probably do that with a CPU of mine and see if that actually helps anything at all, and we could do that test and just do like a liquid metal on top of the actual like flatten lap out the CPU IHS, and what we can do is put liquid metal onto it, next day wipe it away, put more, next day keep doing that for layers. It'll be like a thing that I can do that and see if we can actually make it so that way liquid metal will actually last a long time on the actual IHS and see how well it actually performs. I can do that. That'd be actually pretty fun to do.
Room for either lowering the fan speed or also for overclocking potential. And if we look at the board power draw, we can see just below 300 watts in the gaming scenario. Now the gaming benchmarks, and we will jump into Star Wars Outlaws, which was the scene that I just showed you for just generating some background load for the card. And I want to highlight that I was testing everything in 4K. But the 5070 Ti I would personally probably more use as a 1440p card. But with all the 12-volt high power stuff happening lately, I simply didn't have any time to retest all the other cards again in 1440p. I would probably need like, I don't know, 2 or 3 days for that.
Yeah,
and that's why we will just also compare this
and
one
making
with
the videos
4K.
takes a long time.
And even though I'm aware that it might be better to look at 1440p, I think most other reviewers might look at 1440p, so in the end it might actually not be that bad to also have some information for 4K. So let's get to it. In Star Wars Outlaws, I tested all the cards with DLSS quality, but without frame generation, because even after a couple of driver updates for the GPU and also patches for the games, it is still not working for me. I still don't know why.
Below 48.
But in this condition, we can see the 5070 Ti being about 9% slower than the 4080 and about 12% faster than the 4070 Ti Super. In Assassin's Creed Mirage, the 5070 Ti is 11% faster than the 4070 Ti Super, while consuming about the same power. And it's about 6% behind a 4080. Interestingly, now if we enable DLSS quality, the 5070 Ti now beats the 4080, which might be just due to the fact that the Blackwell is the newer GPU and is more focused on the DLSS features. And if we compare it again versus the 4070 Ti Super, then the 5070 Ti is 20% faster now. In Cyberpunk, without ray tracing and without path tracing,
and I haven't seen a whole lot of tests done with the 4070 Ti Super, and there has been like people getting the 4070 Ti Super, but I haven't seen a whole lot of like benchmarking actually done with it. So maybe I'll have to go through and see who's actually done the 4070 Ti Super and see how many actually were for sale or sold. I'll have to do that too.
5070 Ti is, when we just look at the performance, identical to a 4080. However, it consumes 14% less power, which is definitely interesting and also very important. In this scenario, the 7900 XTX is much faster than the 50.
Yeah, so even same thing with Der 8auers as everyone else, except for he's doing CL30 instead of CL28, like a lot of people are doing. They're using 9800X3D. He's also using the same motherboard, which is the X870E Hero from Asus there. And Linus Tech Tips, I believe, was doing not the X870E, but they did the X670 or something like that. With the 9800X3D at 5.3 gigahertz. And then Gamers Nexus did it at 5.4 gigahertz. CL28 at 6,000 megatransfers per second. So like everyone's using the exact same CPU for some reason. Are they thinking it's going to give you the best performance for the GPU by using that? I don't think so. I think if you use a different GPU like a 14900K or 285K, you get different frames. You could get better frames for some of these games than the 9800X3D. because from everything I've been researching, and now the 9800X 3D is not the greatest for like 4K or 2K. It's more or less built for like the 1080p. So I don't know. I don't know why everyone's using the exact same CPU.
5070 Ti and on the level of a 5080. But also in this scenario, if we enable DLSS performance with frame generation, and also in this scenario, ray tracing and path tracing are enabled, the 5070 Ti is now benefiting from its newer tech. And it can definitely beat the 4070 Ti Super, at least on paper, if we look at the average FPS. If we look at a 1% low, the difference is not that big. And also subjectively, it doesn't feel really different, which might be due to the 1% low, but also due to the extra latency that is introduced. In Counter-Strike 2, it beats again an RTX 4080 with a slightly lower power draw. Then again, in Remnant 2, the 5070 Ti is getting a bit slower than the 4080, and it's about 10% faster than the 4070 Ti Super. And again, I'm starting to see a pattern. Once we enable DLSS, the 5070 Ti beats the 4080. So that seems to be the thing once DLSS is enabled. And last one, Valorant, and we're just seeing the same thing again. It is slightly behind the 4080 and about 10% in front of a 4070 Ti Super. That brings me back to the beginning of the video where I said that the RTX 5070 Ti is roughly the same performance as the 4080 or also the 7900 XTX. And also having this same performance as the 4080 means that it's roughly the same performance also as a 4080 Super, because they're like 2 or 3% apart, which is not necessarily a bad thing. You know, the 5070 Ti seems to be same performance but consuming a little bit less power. And it has, in theory, multi-frame generation. So it's kind of a little bit more efficient 4080 with multi-frame generation. So I think that sums it up. We will quickly take this card apart, take a closer look at this 5070 Ti. You know, it also comes with our friend, the 12-volt high-power connector. And what I find kind of amusing is when there was the initial launch briefing by Nvidia, where, mentioning all the cards from 5070 Ti up to 5090, there was a chat, and in the chat I dropped a message if the 5070 Ti is heavily over-specced with the 12-volt high-power connector, or if the 5090 is just heavily under-specced with a single connector. Yeah, I think we all know the answer, even though I didn't get one from Nvidia, at least in the briefing.
Way under-specced.
I find it cool how small the PCB is and how far more the cooler is extended over the PCB. That's very, very good for cooling. As I said, the card is really not that loud for me, but it might have a negative impact if you're using an air cooler. Now, without the backplate, you know, if you're thinking about that these are being sold for probably about €1,000, and you see that the backplate, which is made from aluminum,
around €1,000. That's insane. Like the way he just said it, around €1,000. Nvidia claimed they're going to be $750. So, like, where's the word from Nvidia going to the manufacturer saying you got to make a $750 model, and all these models are $900 plus? All of a sudden, just all of a sudden, $900 plus. I thought it was Micro Center saying, like, just upping the price from my last live stream there. I was saying, oh, it might have been Micro Center, you know, wanting extra increase in profit there. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it might be now the actual manufacturers of the GPUs, not Nvidia themselves, but it could be Nvidia. But Nvidia already put out a month ago that they're going to be $750 MSRP, so that's US, of course, but $750, and now all of a sudden they're $900. They got $1,000, $1,010 models and up from different vendors, of course. So it's like that's insane, man. That's actually insane that there could be a word going from 750 MSRP from Nvidia, and then all these manufacturers are upping the price by $150, $200 or more. So that's crazy.
Aluminium, which
so it's like, what happened to the 599 1080 Ti? What happened to the 599 3070 Ti? Everything got boosted up in prices. 1080 Ti MSRP was $699. 3070 Ti was supposed to be $599, and then this one here is supposed to be $599. And guess what? This right here turned out to be a lot more than $5.99 when it came out. And that was around the mining time when everyone was getting into the mining. So now, not as much mining. So, I don't know. I don't know what to expect on the prices here. The $900 that I'm seeing now is look like it's going to be the price nowadays. It's going to be $900 for the 5070 Ti, which is actually insane.
Doesn't look bad, but it's just not used at all. They could have placed at least a single thermal pad to at least give you the impression that they at least tried to use it for cooling, but yeah, it's not used at all for anything. Always impressive how tiny these PCBs are these days. I'm not sure if it would make sense to make
my 37 Ti card
really tiny,
it's
really
very, very small
nice
as well.
and cute. The GPU is about 25.5
really
millimeters long and about 15.7 millimeters.
Look at the thermal pads though that's on it. It's like they're like barely being touched. Crazy.
White. Now the thing is very similar to all the other RTX 50 cards. The performance itself is not that bad. It's not impressive either. It's just not that bad. But it might be very bad when it comes to the pricing, which is something that is, at least for me, really hard to judge. You know, if you're just looking at the MSRP of 749, that would not be bad, because at 749 USD, you would get this card, which is roughly 4080 performance. It's a little bit more efficient, has multi-frame generation if you're looking for that. So just looking at that, actually not too bad. It's not impressive, but it's not bad. Not bad, not terrible is something I would say. But
in the middle, which it should be
know.
for a
The
medium tier
pricing
card,
and the things
medium
that were
high tier
leaked
card.
up front
It should
just
be
didn't
in the
look good,
middle.
you know. In Germany, we saw prices between 1,000 and 1,300 euros, which would simply be way too high, because that is sometimes above a 4080 Super, or often above a 4080 Super, and a 4080 Super on average should be faster than this card. It doesn't have multi-frame generation, you know, Nvidia, I know that, but most people probably won't care. Yeah, it makes it incredibly hard for me as a reviewer to just give a good conclusion. The MSRP doesn't look bad, you know, but the reality, the prices in reality, they look a lot different. And they might also change overnight. So difficult for me to give a real good conclusion. It's an okay card, should do okay on a technical level. It's not impressive, but the price might kill it. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Take it easy, man. Alright, everyone, that's it for this Devour Edition live stream update video. So I'll keep doing the updates on, see if anyone's used a different CPU, different setup for these 5070s and 5090s, see if there's any kind of frame differences. Gotta keep up to date if there's any more Nvidia's breaking all of a sudden. And hopefully AMD's got something going for them. Don't forget to comment in the comment section below. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. It does help out the channel a lot. And if you like this kind of content, if you like overclock, if you like PC hardware, this channel's for you. So stick around for more, because we're just getting started. As always, don't forget to get her done.